Okay. Good afternoon and welcome, or good evening, or good morning, or good night, wherever you are and whatever time you are listening to this. My name is David Monro Jones. I'm the COO for the IAPC&M, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by John Sandahl. I'll actually pronounce his name correctly. John is a certified team and executive coach and change agent, and is also one of the senior people with TCI, or Team Coaching International, and will be running a webinar for us very shortly. I know all of this simply because I've done some work in the past with Team Coaching International, and also because I'm reading it from John's bio. So John, if I may ask you just first of all, just a very brief introduction as to who you are and how you got into the role that you're in.
Yeah. So my name is John Sandahl, well pronounced. I am located physically in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I guess the quick summation of how I got to be here and doing these things is for about the better part of 15 years, I had been doing large group facilitation learning, primarily in the school setting for teachers and students. And over the years got more and more requests to do that style of sort of community building and what now we would call team coaching work in smaller and smaller groups and in business settings. And over the course of that time frame, was lucky enough to be related, the nephew of one Phil Sandahl, who is the co-founder of Team Coaching International. And as I had trained to be an internal coach at my previous organization back then, I sort of noticed that, boy, this team coaching thing you're doing, this is now about 2008, 2009, is awfully similar to what I'm doing. In fact, many of the exercises you're using, I'm also using. And so I sort of, barged my way in and said, hey, why don't you show me how to do this team coaching thing? And have sort of never looked back. It almost instantly became my primary focus as a business, as a self-employed business. And, I have sort of put the foot on the gas, so to speak, for that ever since. I've been, it's been my primary source of income and work in the world for, 5 or 6 years at least. And along the way have also had the pleasure of getting to help people learn this methodology and learn about the idea of team coaching as a faculty member for TCI. So that's the quick summation of how I got here.
That's great. And just picking up on the well-pronounced aspect of your name, you mentioned to me moments ago that the origin of that is Swedish. Can you shed any more light on that?
Yeah. So Phil's my father's brother, and their family, half of their family emigrated from Sweden. This is kind of a fun story. They were actually Johnsons, but the Johnson line was too long at Ellis Island where the immigration services happened. So they basically said, well, that Sandahl line is shorter, so let's go over to that line. And so they got in that line, and hence the Sandahl name was born. I've been to Sweden and discovered that it means grassy knoll or small hill or something, but and apparently our family looks very Swedish because when we show up, they just assume we're Swedish. They see our last name and our faces and say, that must be a Swede. So there you go.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that in your bio, so you do something so like with a best way to describe it, so like a circular disc.
Yeah, frisbees. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm intrigued because certainly my experiences as a child was buying numerous different types of frisbees and never being able to do anything with it at all. So
right. Well, I would be in the same camp as you as a child. I didn't know anything about how to throw a frisbee. Honestly, I started out, I went to a summer camp where the sport of ultimate frisbee was kind of a pastime. People played a little bit. And I I had played other sports, and in fact, I had played just about all the other sports. I played American baseball and football. I played, what we would call European football or soccer, and it was okay. I mean, I was passable at all of them. And the first time I played ultimate frisbee, I was terrible at it. I couldn't throw the frisbee at all. I couldn't catch it. I couldn't run with these guys because it's a lot more running than any other sports I'd played. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the most fun I've ever had playing a sport, and I am terrible at it. How much more fun would it be if so I just sort of stuck with it. I started a team in college and played through college, again, badly. We were terrible. We didn't know what we were doing at all. But it's just one of those lifelong passion things. I just kept doing it and kept finding better and better players and teams to sort of learn from. And there was no coaching in the sport when I started, so we were all self-taught anyway. But there was plenty of players locally that were good and at least better than I was, and were willing to share their wisdom. And eventually I made the top team in Minnesota, and eventually then that turned into some invites to join the top United States national teams and be a coach for some national teams. And it's really taken me all over the world. I've got, my claim to fame in this sport is that I've been to maybe more world championships than just about anybody in the U.S., either as a player or a coach. And it's brought me out 5 national championships at various levels and 4 world championships, which people always are sort of wowed at. And I just say, look, you too can be a world champion if you just pick a more obscure sport, right? There's just not that many people playing ultimate frisbee, so it feels good to be a world champion. And I understand that there was a lot of work involved, but I'm also fully cognizant that if real athletes showed up, I would have no place on the team. So I'm happy to be in a small but growing field. Much like team coaching, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll come back to that in just a moment.
Yeah.
For those people who might not know exactly what ultimate frisbee is,
sure,
what do you actually have to do?
Yeah, so it's the basic game looks like a sort of hybrid of American football, rugby, and say basketball, in the sense that you can't run with the frisbee. So you advance it and score much like you would in rugby or American football by possessing the frisbee in the end zone. But you can't run with it. So when you catch it, you have to stop wherever you are without dribbling. So in that way, it's similar to basketball. You have to sort of pivot and throw it to a teammate. You can go in any direction, and if your team doesn't score before it throws it, the frisbee hits the ground or goes out of bounds, or the other team intercepts it, they can immediately attack the other end zone. So you're just sort of playing back and forth, and it's lots of running and high scoring. So the average game is played to 15, and offense has a huge advantage because they get to decide where the race is going to. So the game ends up being played similar to sort of tennis, in the sense that when the offense scores, that's an expected result, say 90% of the time, much like a serve in tennis. But you end up I actually play defense primarily, so my goal was to stop the other team from scoring. And so even if I only did that once a game, that was a huge win for me. So.
Okay. And you mentioned that you've used the that sport within team development. So
right.
How has that gone down?
Well, so I think that my passion for the sport, I mean, by psychological type, I actually would be better fit for individual sports. And I just couldn't keep away from team sports. And I think partly because I'm an extrovert and I like the teaming environment. So I think when I came to coaching, even one-on-one coaching, what I discovered was I like it and I can do it pretty well. But I think what I got really fascinated by was what's going on in those other relationships that we're not talking about or not able to see because they're not here. And much like, coaching an ultimate frisbee team or working as a captain on an ultimate frisbee team as a leader, that interplay of creating team norms and working through difficult conversations and roles and accountabilities and all of that, I found that to be the most fun part of the pastime in the sport. Far more actually exciting than the actual individual game. What I found fun was let's talk about how we're going to train together and set goals and that sort of thing. And I think that just bled into why team coaching made so much sense to me. It was like, well, I get to use that sort of facilitator sense and that leadership sort of lens to help teams improve their performance. And as I know, the average business team's time spent performing versus practicing is the complete inverse of sports teams, right? Sports teams spend 90 or 95% of their time actually practicing. And athletes training, it's probably even a higher percentage. And their actual performance is just a blip on the map of their actual schedule. Whereas business teams, because they have to produce and because results matter, and the way the business works, are constantly having to perform. And so take almost no time to practice, right? Maybe 5% of their time they have a team building event, and that's limited. And so what I found is that this work really, the start of that was this, okay, so let's just think about it for a minute. You say you want to have higher performance and you're spending almost no time practicing. How would you expect to improve that performance if you're not going to do it? In any other field, you would say we need to practice. So here we are. Let's slow down and take some time to practice. And just that conversation started to get results with teams. And I sort of feel like, oh, this is a methodology. There's work here. And then of course, TCI and all the rest. So we can get into that too. But, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk more about that, or rather, you'll talk more about that sort of in the forthcoming webinar.
Of course, yeah, sure.
So, just to finish off, then let's just find out a little bit more about you. What I often call, so will the real John please stand up?
Sure.
So, what do you do in your spare time?
Yeah.
To chill out and and just let things slide by, so to speak.
Right. So, well, in Minnesota, it sort of depends on the season. So it's been bitter cold the last 3 days, -30 Fahrenheit below. So that's very, very cold. And
it's only -2 here.
It literally, yeah. We said, oh, -5. It's a warm spell, and we heard tomorrow it's going to be up to 30 Fahrenheit, which says it's a 60-degree swing. But in the winter, I play a sport. This is another random obscure sport called broomball, which is sort of hockey without skates, which is a fun thing around Minneapolis. I do that. I have a 13-month-old daughter. My wife is also a high-level international ultimate frisbee player, and she's actually better than I am. So we both had decided, let's wait until we're done playing more or less before we try to have kids. And so a year and a half ago, neither of us were done playing. We're like, well, we can't really wait anymore. It's probably time. So here we are with a beautiful 13-month-old daughter, Beatrix, and she is already running. It feels like at 13 months, she can't wait to run, which is something both her parents love to do. So we're enjoying every second of that. She's a handful already, but we are having fun there. All the other things that you kind of might expect, I like to think strategically with board games, and I was a theater major in college, to be honest, so I like to go watch plays and well-written TV shows, but all that sort of it's cold outside, so let's stay in, and in the summer in Minneapolis you must be outside because you've been inside for so much of the winter. So we live near the Mississippi rivers, so we run the river and bike and enjoy the outside as much as we can. There's a festival outside just about every weekend from say May through October. So yeah, as much as that as we can soak up and enjoy.
That's great. And you've been very open about your experiences and hobbies and sort of ultimate frisbee.
Yeah.
What is potentially one thing that people might not know about you?
One thing that people might not know about me. I mean, there's an obvious answer, which is a crazy tangent, but I come from a family of military service. So my father, my grandfather, so Phil's father was a naval officer and an aviator and fighter pilot in World War II. And all of my mom's brothers were Marines, so I was sort of raised with the "you will serve," and at one point actually joined the Army, which nobody that knows and sees what I do now would believe it. But I did join. I ended up not going through with it because I ended up being offered a whole bunch of money for college that sort of took the reason for going out of the equation. So, but I could have had a very, very different life had I served in the armed forces back then. So that's it's an inflection point that leads to very different places.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your openness and honesty.
Sure.
So, as a final point before I wrap up, and what are you looking forward to? When you come to deliver the webinar for your fellow members.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I see the need for team coaching and team coaches in the world in an ever increasing number. I mean, I have yet to talk to a business leader in the world that I operate that doesn't, like, when I explain what I'm trying to help with, that walks away and says, yeah, we don't need that, we're good. Like, I have yet to have that happen. And I think the rate of increasing change in our world and the pace at which businesses are expected to respond to that change and disruption, even non-businesses, even nonprofits and schools. A lot of my clients are governmental organizations and nonprofits, and there's so much need for that kind of conversation. And I'm super excited to introduce that to a broader audience, of course, and just help people think about, what could I do with that, or where could I be using those skills and tools, of course, in to serve businesses and clients, but also even just in my life. Like, I love this stuff, so I'm happy and thrilled to bring it to a broader audience.
That's great, and thank you.
Yeah, of course.
John, thank you very much for your time. I'm really looking forward to the webinar. Thank you very much for your openness, your honesty. I would really like to say that I am now inspired to go out and get a Frisbee.
Okay.
I'm lying, but I am inspired to maybe go and try and find some sort of obscure sport that nobody has yet.
Exactly.
See if I can become a world champion.
Yeah, there you go.
John, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, David. Thanks. Good luck. We'll see you soon.